Well, it looks like we have some viewers online. I'm really excited to start this new series, Food for the Chakras. And I want to thank the Modern Witch Movement, Molly and Raquel, for starting this group, for allowing us to expand our coven. I am joined by my sister witch, Ariel, who I knew here in LA, and now she's in Oregon. And I am so glad to expand this coven to the Oregon crew. So thank you, Ariel, for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Vanita.
And thank you for everybody who's here with us watching. I can see you, and I'm excited to really delve in. So today we're going to talk about the chakras. I hope you tuned in last Wednesday when this series began with Jenny Biondo and Delia, where they talked about the root chakra, and they really went through a lot of depth about it, and brought in beautiful aspects that we use, from crystals to essential oils. Today we're going to talk about it. Ariel is one of my favorite people to talk to when we talk about like the depth of our soul, our mind, our body, because it's about integrating it all together. So I love her to share her wisdom and experience. And we're going to talk about food, and how food is something that we can use to nourish us. I myself consider myself a medicine witch. I actually remember that I'm a medicine witch at a point sometime last year. It's been a long journey to get here, and we'll talk a lot about that. But we're really going to talk about how food can be used to clear some of these blockages that we can carry within our chakras. And then specifically, we are going to be making a chocolatey fudge ball. Now, this is made purely of nuts, of seeds. You can see how fudge and rich it is. And, it's one of my go-to sweets because it's extremely low sugar. It's got the chocolate boost. You're going to get all that serotonin and that beautiful goodness. And you don't feel guilty for eating it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to start off today. I actually pulled some cards from 2 decks, and I just want to start off by reading those cards. So the first deck that I pulled is the first deck that I'm using is called the Moon deck. This is the book. Let's see if you can see it. It comes in a beautiful box, and it's just a really sacred deck, especially for sisterhood and womanhood. It was created by a friend of mine. Her name is Arna, and she spent a lot of really powerful energy, putting powerful energy into these cards. And so the first card that I drew was love and intimacy. And you can see the beautiful moon cycle on this woman's back. And it says, love and intimacy flow into my life effortlessly. And this card, it talks about the relationships, this idea that relationship and love is challenging us to go deeper into the infinite realm of intimacy. Connection in our nature and is vital for our health. And I think this is so essential for right now, connection in nature and in our nature. Above any outside relationship, though, when we drop into loving romance with ourselves, we heal the blocks to true intimacy and can share more deeply with one another. Every woman has gone through something that has changed her in some way. Barriers to love and intimacy may be rooted in distant or recent experiences. Wherever you are on this path, this card asks you to remain open. Trust that you can forge rich, loving connections with others. Intimacy comes in many forms. Adjust your perspective. Walk as a loved woman. Embrace your most intimate romance, the one you have with yourself. Lean into your own heart and feel the warm embers of your love.
Nice. Thank you. Beautiful.
And I just want to share one more card. This one is from a deck called Sustain Yourself. And this was actually developed by a biologist like myself. And my husband actually got me this deck. He went to a talk by this guy and he thought I would resonate with him. And the card that fell out of this was the rainbow card. And this deck is all about nature. And I think it's so appropriate that the rainbow card flew out as we're talking about the chakras. So rainbow represents color. It's a colorful world. So be colorful, expressive, a work of art. Color is energy, so wear all the colors to be the light. Integrated, balanced, radiate, and the whole spectrum of you. Make magic and materialize a vision and a dream. Transform stormy times into rays of hopes and success. Follow the rainbow and find your fortune.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought those were really powerful cards, obviously talking about this concept of the alignment that we have with our chakras, you know, that our chakras are the colors of the rainbow. We do represent the all, the infinite, extensive all that can be condensed and materialized into our bodies. Mm-hmm. And when we have blocks, we're not letting that light in, that full spectrum of the rainbow. And I really loved that card about intimacy with love and the self, because that's what the root is all about, right? That's what our root chakra, the Muladhara, is all about. I'm going to actually go wash my hands because, of course, for anything cooking, we should. And maybe, Ariel, you could provide some of your thoughts dealing with those cards.
Sounds good. So I'm going to say a little bit more about who I am and what I do, just to give some context. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and so I'm attachment informed and trauma informed. And so anytime I hear anything about self-love, I automatically think about like the early attachment relationship, because that really sets the stage for how we connect and relate to others first and foremost, and ourselves. And so I really feel it's important not to skip that step of like, love yourself. It's like, okay, we have to also unpack the root of how we love, period, right? And so really for me, it becomes really important that we're able to like dive in when we feel safe with the right kinds of support to unpack those relationships and begin a journey indeed of self-love, for sure. So that's my little snippet for that.
Love that. That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so true that, you know, all of this begins with where we start thinking about ourselves. You know, the root chakra is, you know, our relationship, not only with ourself, but it's the beginning of our relationship with the external world. And it's where we define self and other. And a lot of that can get wrapped up in emotion and, you know, the experiences that happen to us, especially in early childhood. And it's really important for us to develop that I am. It's the biggest spell that we can cast, right? Mm-hmm. I am. When we put those two words together, that's where we are in that possibility of creation and defining who we are as individuals. And we spend, you know, unfortunately, unless we're taught, unless we're raised to be conscious about this, we're usually unconscious about it. And that I am becomes just lost as words. But every word we speak is a spell and an incantation. And I feel like during this time of this global reset, this global awakening, those words are becoming more powerful. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that we, you know, think about what we're saying with that I am. And it really does start with our fears and our traumas. And it's ever evolving. It's, you know, it's a constant rebalance. Just because you get your chakras into an alignment and into balance doesn't mean that they're that way forever. Life continues to evolve.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can have a dream and wake up, right? And you're out of alignment.
Exactly. Yeah, dream world. That's a whole nother level of work. So actually, let's take a step back, actually, because I think Ariel's heard me say this before, but, you know, one of the things that I like to enlighten people on is actually the word chakra itself. In the West, you know, people have changed this to be chakra. And I'm not sure when that happened. I think it's probably maybe taken from the fact that a lot of English is derived from French. You know, we have like champagne, but really, like, you know, that CH, that ch, it's a hard sound. You know, the word comes from Sanskrit. While the chakra system has been defined in so many different cultures, from the Egyptians to the Sufis, it was really, I think, most preserved and documented in the Vedic texts of India. And so the word actually came from Sanskrit, and it means wheel, which is really interesting. And because we're talking about kind of an alignment, but I think the wheel aspect, I think there's a deeper understanding that even I yet don't know. But, you know, obviously this idea of circular, like we don't have a beginning and an end. We're an ever evolving expression of life. But so chakra is, you know, in Sanskrit, it has that hard CH, and it's, you know, it's, nothing is wrong when you say chakra, but you know, sounds and symbols carry their own weight and their own meaning. And when we pronounce words correctly, we, you know, we honor that culture, and we also give it that, you know, that proper weight. You know, it'd kind of be like, you know, saying like shockboard or shock, you know, it just doesn't sound right. It's not that it's wrong, it's just a different pronunciation. So I just wanted to state that, because I think the more we know and the more that we enlighten ourselves on these various aspects, then, you know, the better we can, you know, clear and purify and honor and respect and evolve and all these things. But, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way people want to say it. I just wanted to highlight that aspect. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, like, we mostly focus on the main chakras of our body. We have 7 within our body, and they go from root all the way to our crown, and they, you know, the center point being the heart, and they bring us into alignment. But there's actually more than that. There's the minor chakras of the body that we often don't talk about, and they can be involved with multiple organs and things like that. There's also the chakras that are of the earth and the universe. And they, you know, there's the earth star chakra that is our connection to the earth. We have our soul star chakra, which is our connection to our highest self. And there's also other chakra systems within and outside of us. So they talk about different cultures, the universal different cultures, and, you know, lots of channelers will talk about the 12 chakra system. You know, and that's really what connects us to heaven and earth, with us being that conduit to allow that transmission of information. And why I wanted to bring that up is because when Jenny and Delia were talking last week, one of the things that they said that I really resonated with is that when we're working with a chakra system, like, or a specific chakra point, like the root, we're never just working with that in isolation. Right? We're working with it in conjunction to where it lies with respect to the others. So the root chakra, the Muladhara, is also working with our sacral chakra, which is, you know, where our womb and, you know, reproductive system is. And it's also working with our earth star chakra. And I really like that, because this is really when we talk about our grounding and our roots into the earth. So you might hear me refer to those, and I just want to make sure that people are not confused by what I'm talking about. Have you heard about those, Ariel?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Earth star, yeah. It's been something that's been popping up a lot lately. I think that as we've moved into this time period, more and more people are sharing the knowledge that they have and the wisdom that they've had. And it's already all out there. It's been out there for a long time, but I think it hasn't been in popular knowledge as much. And so I've been really, you know, bringing that into my practices every morning. You know, I think some of you probably have heard about grounding, this, you know, the practice of grounding, where you put your feet onto the earth and you connect with the earth. Yeah. And, you know, I've been going outside every morning before I begin my meditation, and I ground with the earth. And it really, now that I can have that, like, I ground with the center, the core of Mother Earth herself. But now that I have a knowledge of this Earth Star chakra, I can connect with my specific root into the earth with that connects with the global, you know, everybody, everything, every life that, you know, has come from the earth. But there is a special connection that I have too.
Right. No,
That's
it makes
really beautiful.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense because I think of my body as a microcosm of this whole cosmic experience, right? And so it makes sense that there would be these larger chakra systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So when you, you know, and I'm curious, you know, everybody out there on Facebook right now, and Ariel yourself, like when you hear the word chakra, what do you think of? Like what comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think about a kind of energy system or an energy center where, again, it's like another microcosm. It's like another solar system. It's like another, it's a system where energy has a flow or it has some kind of divine order. And when it's not in alignment, you know, things start signaling, right?
Yeah.
We symptomatize, right? And so it's this system that when it's out of alignment, we feel it in other ways, right? And so to bring it into alignment energetically is then contributing to creating this flow of our whole system. That's
totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. That's exactly what I think of. And Molly mentioned energy points. And I think those are all the words that I think of too, like energy vortexes, energy points. As you said, it works in a system. And, you know, what I think is really interesting is that, you know, it's part of our ethereal body. It's our energy center. And we have been taught, we've been programmed to disconnect that energy center with our physical body and look at physical ailments in and of themselves as, you know, independent points that don't operate together with the rest of the system. And, you know, we really are not only interrelated physically, like all the systems of our body are interrelated physically, but we're also related with our energetic body. And so it's so important to look at it as a whole. A while ago, I don't even know why I got this book. I think it must have like sparked my interest. I probably walked into like a bookstore and it was like really interesting. But there's this book called Chakra Healing. So simple, but it's really deep, and I like it because it's like a really beautiful reference in simple ways. And one of the things they talked about with, you know, blockages at the root chakra, the physical dysfunction include things like lower back pain, sciatica, varicose veins, rectal tumors, cancer, hemorrhoids, constipation, degenerative arthritis, knee problems. Knee problems was something that I thought was interesting. I wouldn't have necessarily considered that at the root. Depression, immune-related disorders, and weight problems. And some of the mental, emotional issues include like physical, family, and group safety, security, ability to provide for life's necessities, ability to stand up for self. And the causes can be like that fear of being alive or guilt, which I think is like so perfect to like lead into this discussion of you know, where we are with our root chakra today, because I mean, talk about it being shaken to the core right now. Safety, stability, fear, you know, what our grounding is. It's powerful.
I would also love to add, in addition to like family trauma, like intergenerational family trauma, oppressive systems and that trauma, like coming into a system where you're automatically oppressed, and just the inherent trauma that comes with that and how that impacts the root, your sense of belonging, your sense of safety. Like I am, it's like, well, am I?
Yeah.
Do I get to be? Right?
Yep.
So
yeah, it's so true. Everything that I've read has said the same thing. It's a tribal relationship, you know, that ancestry, who our family is, where we've come from, you know, and so what you said about it being intergenerational, and also just, I forget the exact word you just used, but, relating to what society's been going through, it's so true because we are all interconnected. Every single thing has come from the earth. So in the end, whether it's our dream life, our past life, our current life, our ancestry, we're all connected. So we have ties to everything. But, within this current physical body, we're most rooted through our, linear ancestry.
Right.
And that really does have an impact on that I am.
Yep. On our physical body, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and we sometimes look to our ancestors, even just our parents and our grandparents, and we think about like what they have suffered through physically and what we're most at risk for because of that. So we do look to them for that. And so it does relate to how we define ourselves as an individual. And I think what's really important is we're learning that we don't have to be tied to that we can break those cords in the ways that we choose to, and allow ourselves to express ourselves as who we define ourselves to be, and not what's been defined for us based on these languages. And I think that that's where we are right now. That's moving into this new earth, that concept that has become.
Absolutely. And I would dare to say our ancestors appreciate that.
Yes. I think they've been waiting for it.
We're like, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to, get into food a little bit. I also want to talk a little bit about my journey. I told you that I remembered that I'm a medicine witch. Like I've been wondering what my purpose is this whole time. And it makes so much sense. And food is my medicine. And I come from a family of doctors, and I grew up to be a scientist myself. I have a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry, and I have an MBA actually in pharmaceutical marketing. And I was in the pharma industry for over a decade, and it was really interesting because I never believed any of it. I used to say I stir the Kool-Aid, I just don't drink it. And, I sell corporate propaganda. Like when people ask me what I did, I said I sold corporate propaganda. I was super conscious about this all. But
that's some heavy shit, Vanita.
It is. And this is, again, going back to this concept of ancestry and like who we are and where we come from. And, I had a brother and sister who passed away of genetic diseases. I was 12 when my brother passed away at the age of 10. And I was 15 when my sister passed away at the age of 8, just shy of her 9th birthday. And, there's long stories and, lots of things involved, but in the end, what it comes down to is Western medicine really did save their lives, in the sense of their lives would have been much shorter and much more painful without it. And I am understanding and grateful for it. But I also grew up knowing that Western medicine does not have the answers. And it's not about one or the other. It's about a balance, and it's about understanding and critical thinking and discernment and knowing when to use it and living our lives the best that we can with the resources that we have, so that we don't have to fall into Western medicine, that it's not the only option, or, it's there to assist us when we need it.
Yep.
So what I like to say is that I'm a balance between the East and West. And Ariel, I see you as the same thing when you are talking to your clients, or like you are having discussions. And like it is that balance of the East and West, because it's not one, it's about whole integration. And when we demonize one, and it goes on both sides, then we lose that wholeness. And this is, again, coming about going into alignment.
Well, and you use the word discernment, which is one of my favorite words. And it's a good witch word, actually, discernment, because discernment is about reading energy and really decoding what is needed for this situation right now.
Yeah.
And the right now is always changing and evolving and emerging, right? And so discernment is a skill and a practice where you're constantly in touch with the right now emerging moment, right? And that could be, right? I mean, if someone's hyperventilating, you don't give them a homeopathic remedy.
Right.
Right.
Right,
Or in
right,
cardiac arrest, you know?
right. Exactly,
So,
exactly.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I think that, let's start talking about food when it comes to this concept of discernment, because I
Yeah,
like, you know,
food.
yay, food, 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 food. One of the things that I think that we have to do for ourselves is discern what's right for us and our body. And it's really important that we listen to our bodies. One of the things that I learned when I was studying Ayurveda like 20 some years ago, it was this concept of treating our body like the temple. We are the temple, and what we put into it is, reflection of how we treat ourselves and our system and our bodies. And I think that it's really important to know that we're unique individuals with, our own interaction with the world, with our own set of emotions, with our own genetics, with our own environment, micro environment that's within our body, and external environment. And so we don't fit under this bell curve. There is no food pyramid that solves the problem for everyone. There is no one way. Diet is not something you do for a period of time. It's how you live your life. And you have to discern what's right for you. I think it's important that we don't get stuck into our current 3D reality of we have to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and have snacks, and meal times are this time, and these are the foods that we need to eat and everybody should eat it. You need to listen to your own body and find what's right for you. And that begins with what I encourage everybody to do, which is to touch and play and smell and interact with your food. Treat food like that living organism that it is. Mother Earth is alive. The food that we eat is alive. And when you start really respecting that food and you start looking and touching and playing with it, you begin to feel that energy, that vibrational energy that it emits. And you understand what you're bringing into your body. And then you can feel those subtle differences. And you can start to discern what those physical symptoms that you're feeling. Was it the food that I ate? Was it the way that I slept? You start to have more of a understanding of the way your body works. And it makes it easy for you then to adjust no matter what environment you're in or what emotional state you're in, because we are going to go through the range of human emotion. And so it's important to know that, like, am I eating because I'm emotional? Why am I reaching for this food? What is my body asking for? What is my emotional body asking for? And so, I think it's a very, important aspect, to really respect. So I actually want to take a moment right now and just take a breath. It's one of the things that I like to do when dealing with food, because as I mentioned, not only does food have energy and should we respect it, but the emotion that we put into our cooking is reflected back at us. I don't know if anybody have you heard of the movie or the book, Like Water for Chocolate? Has anybody on Facebook heard of? Yeah, it's a beautiful novel and movie that came out of Mexico sometime in the mid 90s. And it was one of those things where we were told to watch this movie in Spanish class. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And it ended up changing my life. And it's all about the fact that the food reflects our emotions, the state that we are in, the emotional state that we are in when we are eating and cooking. It's coming back at us. And so I just encourage everybody to think about that, especially when you're serving others. If you're not in your best self, make sure you take that moment, take a breath, and put that intentional love into your food, so that even if you may not be in the best emotional state, that you're not serving that to somebody else. So, when food is serviced, and especially to yourself, even back to yourself, it doesn't have to be for others. It should even be if you're cooking for yourself. So just remember to put a proper intention into it. So let's take a deep breath. Think about an intention for yourself.
Nice.
Well, thank you. So, the root chakra, is obviously our foundation, as we've been talking about stability, safety. I also associate it with our moon cycle as women, right? This is where we release blood and it goes back to the earth. It goes back to nature. And when I think about those, it makes me think about, not just where our root chakra is right at our base, also our sacral chakra and our relationship to the earth, that up and down that Delia and Jenny mentioned last week. And when I think about this, I think about, our digestive system. This is a book that I'm writing where I talk about the balance between intuition and evidence and using our gut, this gut microbiome and our body's microbiome to really have this relationship between evidence and intuition, and also our relationship to the earth. But this is our foundation, right? Our gut is the foundation of not only our digestive health, but our immunity as well. And I mean, talk about timing right now, right? Like, we're all about immunity and digestive health. And we're all about this concept of being in our best health, and health is wealth. Food is medicine. And when we are not in our most optimum health, when we are weakened, even in as simple as like a pain in the knee or, a minor cut or scratch, it's amazing how much of our attention is diverted to that injury or to that pain. And so this is where I, constantly talk about health being our wealth, because this is our seat of power. And when our foundation is strong and our gut health and our immunity, then we can build from there. We release that fear of being diverted elsewhere, of giving away our power, of not being in our optimum health. And it's really interesting that most of the foods that we use for gut health and immunity are all roots, right? So here's horseradish. I just want to show, because I think there's a lot of things that, we can do. We're going to get to the chocolate, because that's always fun. But I want to also, really talk about these different roots. Here's ginger. I think we all know this one really well. Turmeric, which I'm so glad we can find fresh in the store now. That used to be hard.
Yeah.
What I also think is really interesting, like garlic bulbs, right? Just getting a bulb of garlic. Now, these are all bulbs and roots grown into the earth. And so I like to keep batches of fire cider brewing, right? Like, you can make your own fire cider. And it's essentially all those roots that I just showed you. And this is one of those witchy potions, one of these witchy potions. Yeah, you end up with those roots, you strain it out, and you end up I keep lots of varieties of fire cider. Here's a different one. I use different spices, but it's those essential roots. And one of my other favorite ones I forgot to show, which is chili pepper. These are chili peppers I dried myself, actually. Grew a chili pepper plant, ended up with too many chili peppers, and I just dried them.
Love it.
The chili pepper being red like the chakra. But I think that what's important is when we think about the chakras, there's the color that we think about, red, but there's more than that. I think it's think about what it is, how it relates to ourselves in the earth. So rooting down into the earth. And everybody can make fire cider. Everyone can make it. And this is the homemade witchy brew. Improves your digestion. It fortifies your immunity. It keeps you, just healthy and alive. Have you ever drank or made fire cider?
I haven't, but I'm going to now.
Good. I'll send everybody a quick recipe, because this is something that you should just keep, you keep it in. What's beautiful is it sits at room temperature. It doesn't even need to occupy fridge space.
Love
it. I was reminded of it. I've heard about fire cider before, but I was reminded of it when I went to Envision. I was lucky to travel at the beginning of this year, given that really our ability to travel was limited to 2 months. But I was traveling at Envision, and they actually had a witch's tent. And rather, they had the normal, medical services, but then they also had the witches apothecary and the witches, I forget what they call it, like their medic. And I had some stomach ailments from traveling and living in a jungle, and they gave me fire cider every day, and it basically solved all my problems. And I think about all the medicines people take, and really all you need are these root herbs and some cider vinegar.
That's great. Wonderful. Vanita, do you want to check any comments and just check in with some viewers and folks?
Yeah, I see that there's a lot of people looking for fire cider. Yeah. And I really appreciate all these beautiful witches joining us, because these are the core of, the coven. And I am so excited to connect you to the extended coven too, of the modern witch movement.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the fudge.
Fudge.
Yeah, so as we've been talking about the root chakra, and I mentioned our moon cycle and menstruation. I think one of the classic things that when we think about the root are beets, right? And beets are really, really, really important for women's moon cycles, because it's really good for circulation and iron and building our blood back again. So, one of the beautiful things about, beets is I just love their shape. They remind me a lot of our internal organs. They reach down into the earth, they shoot up, and and they're really good overall for, our, like I said, rebuilding red blood cells and bringing that nourishment back to our body. And this is really important for our self-care during our moon cycle and menstruation, because I think that we are in a society that tells us to be on all the time, to go all the time, to not take care of ourselves. And it's really important that we take that moment to sit back, to rest, to give ourselves the nourishment that our body and soul needs during that time. And this is the womb of our creation. All of life comes from the womb of the earth, comes from our womb, which is an extension of the earth, and we're giving back to her with our blood. And I think it's really important that we remember to nourish ourselves. So beets are really good for that. And you saw that red fire cider I had, and that's because I included beets in that fire cider. And we're going to include beets today in the fudge. And so this is actually a really simple no-bake recipe, but the only thing that you bake is the beet beforehand. So to bake the beet, what I'd like to do, I think you've seen probably a lot of recipes out there with foil. I mean, I don't know how you all make beets. There's lots of different ways, but for me, it's so simple, because all you have to do is cut the green part off, and you can cut the little tail that's there, but don't cut it all the way. Leave both the head, like that little scrawly part that attaches to the green stem, and the root intact. And lather this with coconut oil. Give it a nice bath in coconut oil. Stick it on a piece of parchment paper and whatever your baking tray is, and bake it at 400 degrees for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the size of your beet. And check into it, and then just let it cool. That's all you have to do. And then after that, you cut it off. Obviously, scrub the beet before you do all this, but when you're scrubbing it, make sure not to take the skin off, because this is how you're going to preserve all those nutrients so they don't leach out. And this is how you're going to get all the best vitamins out of it. And, we often take the skin off of our vegetables and our fruits because they don't taste good, or they have a different texture, or I think there's some thought about it being like dirty, but it really actually contains a lot of nutrients and a lot of good things. So unless you're doing something where the texture is going to be a problem, I suggest to leave skins on, because there is important nutrients in them that are lost. The other thing that you can always do is repurpose. So I'll take things like skins and, cuttings and things like that, and make other types of potions. So with beet greens, I hope you can buy beets that are already trimmed. You can already buy beets that are baked. Obviously, food has more potency if you buy it in its rawest form. But do what you can. This is not about trying to be the best at everything. This is not about trying to overexert yourself so that you just collapse. You do the best that you can. So if you need to buy a bag of baked beets from Trader Joe's, do that. But if you can do it yourself, that's great. If you end up with beet greens, that's also great because you can make a beet green pesto. I actually just made this last night with the beets that I made. I found some basil in the garden. I remember Jenny and Delia last week talking about basil being also important in the root chakra. It's dealing with abundance and fortune, and that's also in our safety zone, I think. And so, I just stuck the beet greens with some basil, garlic, whatever, olive oil, and you've got a quick pesto. And I ate that today, so you can use all the parts of your food. With skins, sometimes of vegetables, what I do, you can make a stock, like a vegetable stock. Like I'll store like garlic peelings, like all the white parts of the garlic, the onion, all that. This actually has a lot of the potency that you read about in a lot of the foods we eat doesn't come from the flesh. It actually comes from all the parts we grow away. So
like a broth.
So I basically like save all of this stuff and I stick it into a Ziploc bag in the fridge. And at the end of the week, I put some water in there and, some salt and some spices if I feel like seasoning it, boil it. It doesn't really matter how long you boil it for, keep it covered, boil it for hours, and you have a veggie broth that you can put into food.
Oh, thank you so much. That's such a jewel right there. Thank you.
And, I think right now I've been really dealing with this concept of food waste. It's really interesting as we go through this global reset, this global healing. We are giving Earth a break, a rest. She's rejuvenating, and yet we're going to these single-use plastics. Not like we've increased single-use plastics. We've increased a lot more of our waste. Wow. And so I think about the ways that we can reduce some of this, harm to her, because like composting is great, but we're a small house, our composter fills up pretty fast. You got to let that sit. You have another one, but it still takes time. But if it goes into a landfill, because no oxygen gets into the middle of a landfill, the stuff doesn't degrade for the way it should. So if we can reuse what we can reuse, then, we're breaking it down even more. And yes, those remnants after I've taken the nutrients out, will go into my composter. So there's still some waste, but I've still taken, I've still kind of made double use of the food that I have. One other quick one that I want to say that I think is an important one for reusing parts is creating your own cleaners. We can use orange peel and lemon peels, and you just put white vinegar, cheap old white vinegar, into a glass jar with these peels, stick it into a spray bottle, and you can clean all your surfaces. And it is so good.
This is amazing.
Oh, Kitty.
Just assistant here.
Oh, wonderful. I think we got a lot of kitty lovers here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm allergic, so I love them from a distance.
I know that.
Okay. Okay, so let's get into to the cooking here. So I'm actually going to first be using nuts. So this recipe is super simple. The longest part about this recipe is rolling the balls and trying not to eat them while you're rolling them. The nuts that I'm using are going to be macadamia, walnuts, and pecans. You can actually use different kind of nuts. The specificity of the nut doesn't matter. I just like to use the ones that I use because of the contents, the nutrient contents they have, and how they work. So macadamias, I actually only started recently using because I tested my gut health. And I found out that a lot of the nuts that I was eating were actually not doing me any good based on my gut biochemistry. And so I couldn't eat cashews. I really shouldn't eat almonds, all the nuts I was eating. So I started looking to other nuts like macadamia nuts. Now, macadamia nuts are really expensive, so people tend to avoid them. There's also, this thought about them being fatty nuts. And so people think that that's not good for them. But fat is the fat that comes out of nuts are the fats that we need in our body, so these are the macadamias. I think most people associate macadamias with Hawaii, including myself. I was shocked to find out that they originated from Australia. But they have a rich, buttery, creamy taste. So you can imagine that kind of texture they add to a fudge, having that rich, buttery, what you want out of a chocolate, out of a fudge. Walnuts are a great source of the omega-3s. These are essential for the functioning of our entire body, for all of our, body systems. Now, I'm vegetarian. It's not that, anybody has to be vegetarian. I'm vegetarian, so things like B vitamins, the omegas are really important to me, like where I get them from and the sources that I get them from. And it's really important for meat eaters to understand that when you're getting it from the animals, you're getting it from the plants that the animals are eating. It's not that they're necessarily making all these things, except for the B vitamins in some species, but like you're actually getting it from the plants and all the crops that the animals are eating. So depending on where you source your meat from, depending on how that animal was raised, you may or may not be getting all the nutrients that you need out of that meat. So it's really important just to think about supplementing with things like nuts and seeds and whatnot, which are, their pure form. And so pecans are, these are really good. These are actually known to improve digestion and aid in weight loss, which I thought was interesting. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way we fill ourselves up. The way we end up sustaining. So I'm going to make a little bit of noise, but I'm basically, the only thing you really need aside from a baking tray to bake a beet for this recipe is a mixer, food processor of some sort. You can use a Vitamix, you can use a NutriBullet, I just use my regular old food processor, which I'm glad you can't see because this thing is pretty beat up. It's about 12 years old. I use it pretty heavily. It's well loved. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a cup of macadamia nuts, a cup of walnuts, and half a cup of pecans. And like I said, you can use different nuts. Think about their texture. Think about their creaminess, their fattiness. That's going to, be the result of your fudge. If you use Brazil nuts, obviously it's going to be dry and brittle. You don't want that. So think about that when choosing your nuts. Like hazelnuts are great. Almonds would work. Cashews would work. And I'm going to grind it up so that it becomes like a, just like almost like a sand-like texture. So it's going to be noisy for a minute. Excuse the noise. Ariel, what nuts do you like to eat?
What was that?
What nuts do you like to eat?
I love cashews.
Yeah.
I love hazelnuts. I love pistachio nuts.
Trail mix? Is that what you said?
Pistachio.
Oh, pistachio. I love pistachio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm a big nut fan.
Yeah. Pistachios are one of my favorite, and I find them so satisfying by being able to like crack open the shell. I don't know what it is about.
Indeed. Yeah. My daughter really loves that too. So you're putting the beets and the nuts in the mixer?
Yeah, so I am just simply I have the big blade, the big, not like, something for shredding, but the big blade in there. And it's perfect for just grinding up the nuts. I've actually made peanut butter in the food processor and almond butter. So you can grind them all the way to a creamy texture, just with some oil. So you can do all of that. Obviously, that just depends on your patience and time and whatever. This is partially why my food processor is so beat up. But
well, I know what to get you for your birthday.
All right.
All right. Got a little kitty here. Meow, meow.
Right. As you can see, it does not take long at all. I'm going to put this into a bowl. I'll show you. And you don't need to clean it out, but you're going to use the food processor again for the next part. But you can see that it's, let me see if you can see it.
Okay, so that was just the nuts, right?
That's the nuts. That's just the nuts alone. And I actually leave a few chunks in there. I've been making this fudge a lot lately. And so you can, you can make it to the consistency you want. You can see how short that was in terms of a blend. Jenny is asking that she doesn't have a food processor. Can you use a blender? I think it really just depends on the quality of your blender. There are so much stuff since I bought my equipment however many years ago, and I think that there are more high-powered blenders out there. I think in the past, blenders would break with some things like dry ingredients like nuts and things, but I do know that they've improved in that technology. So I think I would suggest maybe researching it before putting nuts in your blender and breaking your blender, because I wouldn't want that to happen. I think that you can buy little tiny food processors. You can scale this recipe however you want. I'll be sending it afterwards. And you can scale it however you want, but you can also buy those little mini food processors. They're really not that expensive. And it's nice to have on hand, like I said, because you can make a quick pesto. You can, make so many things. And when you have access to, tools can make our life easier sometimes. And it's amazing just to have something that just blends really quick. I ended up loving my food processor so much that I wanted to give it a break, and I found a Vitamix on sale, and I bought this Vitamix that's become my life. And I have like a dry container for it and a wet container. And at first I was like, am I just, what am I doing? This is too much stuff. I don't like to have too much clutter, especially for kitchen gadgets. But if you teach yourself how to use them and you just start thinking about your food differently, you'll start using these tools. Tools are great. Oh, she does have a food processor. That's awesome. Yes, and I agree. Tools are important. We all have tools as witches, right? Whether they be crystal cards or intuition is a tool, they're all tools.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So now I have the nuts blended. I'm just going to put those aside. And the only other thing that we have to prepare in advance are the dates. Now, I love dates because this is a whole food sugar, which is going to be better for us than using any refined sugar. I don't care what processed sugar it is. Anytime you use a whole food, this is what's better. This is what the pharma industry got wrong. They like to isolate components. The food industry follows the pharma industry in the sense of isolating components, and they're regulated by the same systems of government. And so this concept of like isolating components and taking all the other stuff away from food so we can just have the sugar, like you create granulated sugar out of sugar cane instead of using sugar cane itself. Yes, the food can stay longer and has a longer shelf life, but what you end up with are other problems, right? Like this is where we have a rise in things like diabetes, and especially something like type 2 diabetes, which, unfortunately in our high sugar culture, we're just so unaware of all the background sugar in our diet. And this is where something like fruit sugar can start to have an impact on us if we have too much excessive sugar in our diet. And some of us are more prone to it than others. Like it runs in my family. Speaking of ancestry and genetics, it runs in my family. So it's something that I'm super conscious about. So I like to use whole food sugars like bananas, dates, these types of things that have a lot of sugar content, but they also have the fiber and they have the vitamins and the minerals and all the nutrients that our body needs, and our body uses that whole thing. Dates are, mostly found in this country dry. I like to use medjool dates. They're just sweet and they're readily available. So what you do is you soak them overnight in a bowl of water. Now, if you're like, I want to make fudge and I totally forgot to soak these dates, all you have to do is boil some water, stick it on top of the dates, and it takes about 20 minutes. So you can do it last minute. But I can show you here, like, here's the dried date. And then, you know, it plumps up. Like I would do, I don't want to put this over my computer because it's drippy, but it plumps up. And so it becomes easier to blend. Now, the skin is a little bit of a texture. Leave the skin on. It'll blend in. Don't worry about it. But what you have to do is to make sure to take out those nuts, because the pit of the date, I will tell you, will destroy your Vitamix. It will destroy the blade of your Vitamix. So that is one strong seed right there. Yeah, I love dates. I used to eat dates so much, just as like an accompaniment to something like cheese. It's just that sweet, creamy texture together. I don't eat cheese now, but is that like, do you eat dates?
I forget about them.
I know, right?
They fall off the radar. I need people like you to remind me of dates, you know?
Yeah. Well, I actually thank my husband for that, because he's the one who loves dates. You know, he's, I don't know if they eat them a lot in France. I mean, his sister lived in Morocco for like 10 years. And so my husband's French, by the way, for all of you who don't know him, but as in born in France. And his sister lived in Morocco, as I said, for 10 years. And so there was a lot of dates around because of that. And now he eats them. You know, that's kind of his, like, you know, after meal, when you have that kind of like, I want sugar after a meal. You just ate something. You're like, ooh, you know.
And they're super sweet too.
Yeah. Dates and salad. Yes, dates and salad. That's a really good way. I actually never think to do that. That's actually a really good way to add sweetness as well. Okay, so I'm going to, so I added all the dates without pits, and now I'm just chopping off the ends of my beet. And so that was a small whole roasted beet. I use, if it's a large beet, I use about a quarter. I'm using about half of this beet. Now this is, like I said, it's, you know, I do this because I think it's really great for us to have the beets for our moon cycle, and I tend to reach for this fudge a lot during my moon cycle, so I like to include it. But it's also sugar, right? Beet is a lot of sugar, so you're again adding a whole food sweetness into this, and this is just taking out the need for any sort of refined sugars. And so it, again, another good sweetener, also great in salads and other things. So I have the dates and the beets in there. The next thing that I'm going to add is vanilla paste. Now, I use vanilla paste. I buy it in big, giant bottles. And what this is basically the vanilla bean made into a paste. I like it because it's got more of the vanilla flavor. You can also use pure vanilla extract. Each one of these things, or you can actually go all out and use a vanilla bean. I don't know if anybody's seen, like, not many people know a vanilla bean. It's really tall and lanky.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's just this, you know, really hard, weird thing. And what you do is you just take a nice sharp knife, slice it down the middle, and use the back of the knife to scrape out the vanilla beans. And it's wonderful. I tend to use like a whole vanilla bean when maybe in a smoothie. They're expensive, so I tend to use them sparingly. I use them when I'm being really decadent. Also, when I am trying to kind of get the effects of vanilla. So vanilla is really important to us. It's also, I don't know if anybody knows this, but our brains don't realize vanilla is not sweet like a sugar. So when we eat or smell vanilla, we actually are tricking our brain into thinking that we've added sugar to something, that we're eating something sweet. So you could add vanilla to your morning beverage without sugar and think that you've added some. I mean, obviously, you know, when it's something very bitter, you might need something there depending on your taste buds, but it really reduces that need for any extra sugar.
I have a
Um,
friend who puts a
yeah.
vanilla bean in his water bottle.
Ooh, that's great.
Right? Tastes sweet. Yeah.
Ooh, I never thought about that.
I
That's
got to let that
amazing.
out. I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. Um, you know, I think that vanilla is super cool too because it's good for the heart, it's good for the brain, it's good for our digestive health. One of the things that I learned when I was actually researching vanilla was that vanilla is actually really good for respiratory conditions. So if you guys are feeling like any sort of anything in your chest, you're having a hard time breathing, you are just not feeling good, and you feel like you're getting sick in your chest, actually all you need to do is take some vanilla extract. You can put it in some hot water and you can breathe into it. And I know there's a lot of good essential oils that Jenny can talk to you about that are also good, but think about also mixing in some vanilla. Where do you get vanilla paste? I used to get this at a cooking store here called Surfa's, which unfortunately closed by us. And I then found my next bottle on Amazon. Amazon's always the wonder of things. But this one is called Nielsen Massey, and it's Madagascar Bourbon Pure Vanilla Bean Paste. There's no bourbon in here. It's just the name of the bean. So you can get that. It's expensive. I mean, this is a huge bottle. It's 32 ounces, and this is probably like, I don't know, $60 or $70. It's quite expensive, but this will last you a long time. And if you are cooking a lot, you can put it in your smoothies. You can do a lot of different things with this. I cook a lot, and it takes me about a year maybe to go through this bottle. So just keep that in mind. So it will last you a long time, and it won't go bad. It stays for a long time. Just talking more about vanilla. I was talking about how vanilla is good for respiratory problems, which is something that I didn't know. So you can actually take vanilla extract, put it into hot water and breathe, and it can help with that. Obviously essential oils as well. And
Can you
it also makes you happy. Say that again?
Can you put it in your diffuser?
Sure, you could.
I mean, you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how a diffuser works that well to know how it handles other things, but I mean, it can handle an essential oil. Why can't it handle vanilla extract? Jenny is like the smell sorceress, and she really teaches us a lot about doTERRA oils and their qualities, and has gotten me hooked. And I also use them in my cooking, so it's something that we'll talk about.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the vanilla, I use vanilla paste. I feel like vanilla is not something that you can really go wrong with. I kind of eyeball it. You want maybe about a tablespoon of vanilla or a little less, but I just kind of eyeball it. I think one of the most important things when you're cooking is to not stick too closely to a recipe and really make it your own, intuit your way into the food. Think about what your body needs, think about what it's craving, and you can always adjust, taste along the way and adjust. But the more you start practicing that, the more comfortable you'll get around food.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So speaking of doTERRA oils, one of the things I want to add into this, I sometimes add, I don't always add this, but like I said, I've been making this a lot, so I'm changing it up. I'm going to add some ginger essential oil. Now, I typically like to use whole foods, right? Like things like ginger, but ginger is so fibrous. And to grate ginger is like going to destroy your machine. I mean, you can do it. It doesn't completely destroy. It's just a mess to clean up. So this is where really using essential oils to cook is great. And all you need is one drop into this whole thing. And this is a book that Jenny turned me on to, essential emotions, and it's looking at kind of like the emotional qualities with all these different essential oils. And ginger, like, you know, the positive properties of ginger is it makes us feel empowered, committed, capable, purposeful, accountable. And so, you know, when you just add a drop, it's enough in this entire thing to kind of get that, you know, it's just that essence in the back of your throat. But I usually do it without. It's not essential at all. But it's just, you know, a witchy tip.
Yeah, I always feel so clear when I smell ginger.
Yes.
Right?
I know, right? And every time I feel like when I smell it too, I feel like my digestion starts moving. Like it really starts to, and I think that's a really important point that you made. Like our olfactory senses really do stimulate our organs of our body. So, you know, smell those foods as you go along. So the other thing that I am adding to this, just because I am feeling like this, it's not essential either, but this is just to show how you play with your food. This is a no-bake recipe. It's great to add the essential oils. Why not add some CBD? So I'm adding some Papa and Barkley 1-to-1 CBD THC, because I love this during my moon cycle. It helps with kind of like my lower back cramps, my emotional state, my nervous system. And so if you know, why not add it to your food? Don't give it to your kids. This is a 1-to-1. Use pure CBD, do whatever you want. You don't have to do it, but these are ways that you can change up a recipe and have fun with it and make it fun for yourself and make a fun treat, you know?
We like fun.
Fun is always good. So
I had a lot of fun with Vanita. I should just say that.
I know I miss having you here in LA, but I'm so happy for where you are.
You're welcome, Vanita.
All right, and we're also going to add coconut oil. Now, coconut oil is like one of the best fats around. It got a bad rap during the whole saturated fat argument, but it's like one of the best oils for your body. It has all the right fats for you. It's especially good for your feminine hygiene. If you're itchy, if you have any discomfort, rub some coconut oil and rub it all over you. Really, I have a jar of this that I use in my bathroom that is for my skin. I don't use anything else, but like, especially down there, I mean, it will take care of so much. And it's because it's antibacterial, antifungal, you know, it has all those properties. So when you can use a natural remedy that's so simple, instead of like all these other creams and supplements, like as you're starting to get, you know, if you start to feel the twinges of a, you know, a urinary tract infection, like, you know, really start to think about supplementing in your diet. There's certain things that can help, like grapefruit seed extract and coconut oil, rub it all over your body. Yes, it is a great.
Oh, lubricant, is that what you were going to say?
What'd you say?
Were you about?
Yeah, so somebody said great lube, and I'm like, just not with condoms.
Well, Mary, who's on the call, I think, or on the live, is there sugar in coconut oil?
Not if you're getting refined pure coconut oil.
Okay.
So, I mean, the coconut plant is like, you know, a wonder plant in the sense that you can use so many parts of it. And they do refine coconut sugar. Like if you're going to use a processed sugar, I highly recommend using date sugar or coconut sugar. And, you know, with the coconut oil itself, there's no sugar, no fiber, no nothing. It's pure saturated fat.
Okay.
And I think like you'll get the sugars in the water and the milk, but you won't necessarily get it when they just extract the fat.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly make this into a paste, and then what we're going to add next are flax seeds and the magic ingredient, cacao. So let me just blend this first. Now this takes a little longer because you want to make it into a fine paste, and the dates really take a lot of work. The reason I grind the nuts first and then put that aside is because I don't want to be like, I want to make sure the nuts get ground and don't get muddled into the paste, and then it becomes a very chunky fudge.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, what are your go-to things? Like, what do you find are your go-to foods during your moon cycle? What do you crave?
Oh, definitely chocolate for sure.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee really helps me during my moon cycle
Do
with,
you pick the coffee or the caffeine?
well, I mean, I have this like really intimate, sacred relationship with coffee because it's connected to my most loving attachment figure, my grandmother. So it's both. I mean, it's the caffeine and it's the nurturance that I get from it, right? But I add honey and I add coconut oil and I add like mushroom powder and maca.
Yeah.
I like red wine. Yeah, like fatty, like nuts, fatty foods, fatty
Yeah.
cheese. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I go there.
Yeah. I remember you were talking about your ritual. I had written a post on Facebook, I don't know, 2 months back now about caffeine. I had
Oh,
gotten
I
this
remember.
download from Mother Earth that caffeine was an expression of the masculine. I think there's ritual uses of caffeine, but the way that our cultures have co-opted it have been more to get into this energy of doing.
Right.
And we have no longer, like, we've lost that receptivity. So, but then, the ability to receive and just to be. But what you made me think when you were talking about this ritual aspect that you have with coffee, and I think it is that for a lot of people, this concept of ritual. What I found was this brewed cacao that so it's ground exactly like coffee, except that it is cacao, and it's amazing because you actually get this, like, you get the benefits of that serotonin high that you get from chocolate, and you drink it like a cup of coffee, which was like something that I just thought was so amazing. And because cacao, when it's in its purest form, really has low caffeine content, and so, but you get an energy from what cacao's ingredient, which I forget, it's like theobromine or something like that. But it's been an interesting it's just been an interesting supplement for me, because I do have my morning rituals with teas and things like that. And like drinking a non-caffeinated tea in the morning is not quite the same. So this has really been, this has been a wonderful supplement for me.
I would love to try it.
Yeah, the company is called Creo Brew, if anybody can see that. And it's brew cacao. So we have a couple comments here. So Molly was asking if we can use really dark chocolate instead of cacao. And absolutely. So what the benefits that we get from chocolate, like chocolate has a lot of benefits, right? I think we've seen them written everywhere, but sorry, I'm just moving this out of the way here. But it's so good for you, and all the benefits come from dark chocolate. So yes, you can use dark chocolate. You want to avoid too much processing. You remember that if you're using like chocolate as in a chocolate bar, that it's going to have fats in there. It's going to have the oils in there. It's not just chocolate. You're going to have the cocoa butter and maybe some other kind of oil. So you're going to have to watch the consistency so that you're not having too, it's not too runny, right? So if you're using dark chocolate, what I use is cacao powder. I actually put this into my smoothies. I put this into everything. This is how I make brownies. This is how I make everything chocolate. And it is the purest form of the benefits of cacao. And you don't really have that much added anything, right? So I just, I actually bought this bag at Ross of all places. It's amazing what you can find, deals you can find. Yeah. I always just check what they have, and like, because I go there to buy things for like the bunny or whatever, and like, and I look in their food section, and like, I found flax meal there. I found cacao. I mean, I probably depends on your location, but oh yes, Mary is with us. And she says you got to watch out for sugars when dealing with any infections. Totally true, which is why I like to use coconut oil. You don't want to use anything too sweet. And then she also said that your coffee is the best coffee ever.
Thanks, Mary. I also add cacao to my coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. You sound like what Lisa does. Lisa Freeman, our other sister witch, she adds like turmeric and coconut oil and like all sorts of wonderful things and makes the best coffee ever.
Oh,
And
actually,
she says,
yeah. We
yeah,
just had a conversation about that actually, Lisa and
yeah,
I.
yeah. Okay, so we're gonna add half a cup of cacao of this. I'm gonna add that in. And then I'm also gonna add a third of a cup of flax meal. Take it out of the bag. Sorry, I have moth problems, so if it's not in a glass jar, it's in a bag. So I buy ground flaxseed meal. Flax seeds are really, really good. Nuts and seeds are so good for our health. I can't emphasize that enough. But when you're eating flax, just remember that our digestive system can't actually break through the flaxseed itself. So if you buy flaxseed, grind it. Like I have a separate grinder that I don't use for coffee. It's a spice, like I call it a spice grinder, but it's really just a cheap coffee grinder. You can buy flaxseed and then grind it yourself, or you can buy actual ground flax meal. But when you buy ground flax meal, just be aware that, like, use it within a period of time. This stuff like is as shelf stable as it wants to be, but you do begin to lose the nutrients and things do go rancid after some time. So that's why it's nice, like if you don't use something like flax seeds often, I'll put flax seeds in my smoothie. Like I'll do things like that. You can put them anywhere. I put them in all my baked goods. It's just amazing the ways that you can get nutrients out of the foods that you need or you want to eat, like bread or cake, and just put some flax seeds.
Your kids' pancakes, right?
Or your kids' pancakes. Yes, that is a good one. That's a good
one. Sneaky with the pancakes.
Yes,
right.
Pancakes are a great one.
Yeah,
we've been doing this mix of like half and half, like where it's like a banana pancake, but we add some like flours and stuff, and like I'll put a protein powder mix in there, so like a hemp powder or something like that. So just boost up your pancakes. Hide it all in the pancakes.
Exactly. Kale, spinach, all the things. And then a couple chocolate chips on top, and she's all over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. That's so perfect. All right. All right, I'm gonna mix this up. I'm gonna move a little faster because I've been talking a lot, and I'm just looking for my salt. Salt. So I'm gonna add about half a teaspoon of salt, and you always want to have salt to bring out the flavor. Even when something is sweet, you always add a little bit of salt. I'm gonna blend that in, and then once that's blended together, I am gonna add the nuts. I think it's really interesting when we were talking about, the root chakra and this concept of like stability and safety and fear. One of the things that I think comes up a lot during moon cycles is this concept of guilt and shame. And, and I think it's not necessarily our own. It's like, that can be societal, that can be ancestral. There's so much there. And, that's really seated in that root chakra. And so I really like to provide myself with nourishing foods so that I can sit and feel comfort in my body in whatever way I need. Like if I'm lying in bed, I prop up my knees, I give my lower back a little bit of a break, and provide myself with nourishing foods that don't make me feel guilty, that don't add to the guilt, and try to feed into where those feelings come from. Like, are those mine? Do I carry my own guilt and shame? Do I have any womb healing that needs to be done that comes from that? Or is it more generational, ancestral? And I think that these are important topics to sit with, because I do feel like in this time period right now, we're not only doing work for ourselves when we heal, we are really healing ancestral, tribal, generational narratives.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vanita.
All right, this is all blended into a smooth paste, so I'm going to add the nuts back in so they all blend together, and then I just roll them up. issues have you been finding coming up with people during this time as you've been seeing clients? Like, is there a common theme?
Yeah, I mean, the common theme is that whatever's been going on is amplified, you know? It's
Yeah.
like whatever someone has been maybe avoiding, or, you know, it's like there's so much less. I mean, we still have distractions, but I feel like there's less distractions. I don't know if that's really accurate or if people resonate with that. And even
we're
if
not going out into the world, and so we're not distracted.
Yeah, I mean, and even if we're able to distract in our waking life, it's coming up in the dream life. And so I just am finding that there really is like a bubbling up and an amplification of whatever it is that, like your shadow, whatever it is that needs to be looked at, needs to be faced. That seems to be the common theme. And then, you know, people are resourced to do that, or they're not resourced to do that. And so then conversations about how to support, how to navigate, just like dealing with those emotions.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it all, like, as you said, we're finally forced to confront those issues that we've been ignoring within ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's having the space to really sit down and deal with those emotions.
Yeah.
And we can't hide from them now, right? And this is part of that kind of, you know, that rise of the feminine divine is being able to sit back and not hide, not try to fill up our time and distract ourselves from those emotions coming up.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more uncomfortable to like hide, right?
Yes.
So it may have felt easier to do that. It's feeling harder to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So a lot of nervous system regulation. So that's happening a lot in my meetings. It's just really like autonomic nervous system regulation through breath work, coming back to the breath, teaching really basic skills around being with your breath, being in your body. Mindfulness meditation. So like trauma-informed mindfulness, 5 senses mindfulness, doing a lot of that.
Yes.
Meditation, helping to teach meditation, whether it's guided on an app or I'll guide clients through meditations. So anything supporting folks to be in nature, to connect with plants, go on walks, go on hikes if they can.
Yeah.
Just be with the earth, talk to your houseplant, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of autonomic nervous system regulation and a lot of learning what it, you know, building capacity and resilience to be in your body.
Yes.
Right? To just be in your body and to create relationship with your body as a safe place to feel what you're feeling. Because for a lot of people, historically, like their bodies are not safe places to feel what they're feeling. Yeah. And that's very root chakra.
It's all root chakra.
And that's all like from past events, right? So it wasn't safe in the past, but can it be safe now, right? Because the nervous system and the brain, right? This is like how we survive. It tells us it's not safe when we feel that feeling.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's remembering what happened in the past.
Exactly.
Right? So a lot of support around, but is it safe now in this moment? What's different? Can you breathe through that emotion right now? And can that feel okay? So a lot of that work. Yeah.
That's super powerful. I think it's so essential, that idea of being present, and how breath work and mindfulness meditation brings us to that. Anxiety is thinking about the future, depression is thinking about the past. And when we're in that present moment, we don't have those limitations of our experience or projection to the future based on our experience.
Yeah, so that's a very new skill for many, right? The present moment, because we learned so early the present was a place to escape.
Right.
Right? And to dissociate from.
Right.
So to develop a new relationship with the present moment is like learning a new, I mean, it's so much becomes possible with that, just with the breath, right?
Yeah, so true.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Yeah. So we can come back to this. I also want to check in with you with what you're doing right in your present moment.
Oh yes, in my present moment, what I am doing is I am rolling. So let me just show you this. This is when you get your hands dirty. It's like playing in dirt, right? You want to play in the dirt, play with your food. You see how sticky that is?
This is like very root chakra right now.
Very root chakra, right? And so I just roll it into a ball between my palms, right?
That's really, wow. That's very sensual.
Very sensual. And it's also like, I love that feeling, like that present moment feeling when I'm going through this, being with the food and feeling it and playing with it. And then what I do is you can roll this in anything. I'm actually, just for simplicity, rolling this in cacao, just dry cacao powder. But what you can do is like, you can roll this in hemp seeds, roll this in coconut flakes, roll this in flax if you want. There's so many things that you can do. You can make a variety. Once I rolled it in matcha powder. You know, there's lots of different things. You know, play with it. Find what you like best. And then what I do is once all these balls are rolled, then I store it in the freezer, because that way they stay nice and hard. And because of their texture, they don't really, depending on how cold your freezer is, they don't turn into hard rocks. They only take a few seconds to thaw, really, that you can bite into. I like them cold. You can also let them warm up to room temperature, but it's a great way to kind of have that snack that you want. Like, you know, if you don't want to reach for a date and you want something super chocolatey, go to your freezer and grab a ball. I just want to go through some of these comments. There was the comment about, like, you know, how much nutrition is in flax and that there could be a whole episode on flax. And I think flax is like a really important, not only just for the nutrition, and you know, seeds and nuts are really associated with the sacral chakra. So as we move up into reproductive system, sexuality, feeling there. And so, you know, it's wonderful when we're thinking about the root and sacral and even the solar plexus, because, you know, we want to think up and down and we want to keep aligned. And so, yes, really good all around. And I think a lot of people are wanting these balls right now, and I wish I could like give them to you. I wish one day we will get to that point when we know how to use our full potential and be able to really share. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there have been a lot of comments about dealing with shadow work, and I really appreciate all your interactions, everybody, because yes, this is all important work that we're doing. And I'm really, really proud to be around so many people doing this hard work. It's not easy to face our root fears. It's tough. I mean, this stuff is tough. I had so many breakthrough last year, and here I thought, I was like, woohoo, I'm done. And like, you know, done with like the biggest main issues. But then like, there's all this stuff that's coming up with family and refinement. And like, the more I work through it, it's amazing. I mean, you know, I've had almost no interaction with my parents for, you know, 6 years now, very limited. And, you know, it's partially because, you know, I was the caretaker of the family. And when I had my daughter and I had to remove myself from the drama and I could no longer feed into that drama, I had not done my healing work yet. I really just took that step back, and it's been a source of pain for me to, you know that I have a daughter that doesn't have a relationship with her grandparents, repeating the cycles that my parents did with me, and I didn't want to be there. And I have been going through so much of this root chakra work and really breaking through so many narratives and so many fears. And now we're at a point during this quarantine. Talk about transformation. My daughter has weekly calls with my parents, and I actually now can, when speaking to them, I have rewired my nervous system so that I no longer end up in palpitations and sweat and fear. And it is now actually coming from a place of authentic love. And it's love in the ways that I can show it to them. And it may not necessarily be the words "I love you" yet. That is not, it's not a place where I'm comfortable with. But like when I am speaking from that authentic place and really showing the appreciation and gratefulness, it's beautiful. And I really am appreciative of this time that has allowed me to do that work.
Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably. And you've done so much work, and you have, I mean, just knowing you in the last 5, maybe 4 years.
Yeah, I think it's been like 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah,
I just love you. You're wonderful. Yeah.
I love you. I love you. Well, I don't want to hold people up and keep people drooling. I'm going to keep rolling these balls. But basically, that's the the recipe. It's so simple. You all can do this, and I promise you'll have the best food in your fridge when you do it. Something you mentioned, you add to your coffee mushroom powder. You can also add mushroom powder to this. Like juice it up with whatever you want to like improve whatever conditions and aspects of yourself that you want to improve. Food is medicine, and use it, and like you can hide it in so many places. So it's like hiding all those things that you're like, what do I do with this? Put it in fudge balls.
Can you show us the rolled fudge balls?
Yes. So here is that.
Beautiful.
And so, like I said, these are ones that I made before. You can see the reddish kind of color from the beet. It's super chocolatey when you eat it.
Yeah.
The dates, and they give it that texture. It ends up not raising your blood sugar, so you don't get that sugar spike, and you don't get those lows that you get from sugar spikes. So it's really beautiful.
Right.
I want to just mention that, this is not the end of Food for Chakras, and it's not the end of the series on chakras. Next week, Jenny and Delia are going to be going through the next chakra, sharing their wisdom, which is, going into the sacral chakra. And they're going to be really, going back into the essential oils, the crystals, and all of the feelings and the emotions. It's a really beautiful interaction to watch them chat. So tune in next week on the Modern Witch Movement for that. And then following that, I'm going to be doing a recipe for the sacral chakra, and we're going to keep going up until we ascend all the way to the crown and release our light to the world. And so people are asking for the recipe. What I will do is I am going to post this when this Facebook Live posts, and I am going to put the recipe into the comments. I'll give you the recipe for both the fire cider and for these fudge balls and anything else that you guys want. And, please feel free to ask questions. And, maybe one day when we can socially interact again and not need to physically distance ourselves, we can do this as a group. So, because
I'll give you a big squeeze.
Yes. But food is wonderful to share with our coven. So, thank you, Ariel, so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
A lot of fun, and thank you for all of you who joined us live, and for all of you who watch us on replay. Feel free to continue to submit questions. I mean, Ariel's a depth and wealth of knowledge, and she shared very little, but it's amazing what happens when you ask her a question. So don't be shy.
I'm a little bashful, but that's okay. I do come out
a little bashful, and then that's why we got to hang out in person, because that's when I turn more bashful and you come alive. Good balance. All right. Thank you, everybody. We love you. With my dirty hands, get dirty with your food.
Bye.
Bye.